Go.
As Kathy mentioned, my name is Naomi Hagel. I am part of the Education Spectrum team that has been working with North Bay Regional Center. I'm also, among other things, a recovering regional center manager, a credentialed person-centered thinking trainer, an independent facilitator, kind of depends on the day. But tonight, what I am honored to be kind of leading this roundtable to introduce some fabulous independent facilitators to our community. And the format of this evening is that we will be asking the independent facilitators some questions. They will be answering them, and some of the questions everybody will answer, only some will answer. We also want to hear from you, the audience. If you have questions, please feel free to raise your Zoom hand and/or put it in the chat. And we will also be sharing all of the contact information for all of the independent facilitators that we are introducing you to this evening in the chat as well. Email addresses, websites, we've got it all set up. So what I am going to start with is I'm going to introduce each independent facilitator by going around my Zoom room. So it's kind of fun, who's who. And I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourself and explain why you decided to become an independent facilitator. And no pressure, but Elizabeth Cuevas, you're up first.
Thank you. Gracias a todos. I'm just going to speak briefly in Spanish in case anybody needs translation. Si necesita traducción, por favor, ponga su nombre en el chat. If you need translation, of course, put your name in the chat. My name is Elizabeth Cuevas. I became an independent facilitator because of my oldest son, Christian. I'm not sure if let me see if I stop my camera. There he is. He just graduated this past year, and he's been a client of Regional Center since he was 2.5. And I've just always been advocating for him. And then I would meet families in the waiting room and in different places, and we would talk and share information. And I've always been one, if something helps my child, I'm always telling everyone and trying to help others. So this job, this opportunity to become an independent facilitator was already kind of what I was doing, but now part of, helping people go into self-determination programs. So my son's coordinator was Miss Tamara Polly over here. And after working with her, she said, I think you can do this. You're able to help other families. So I went ahead and took the certification class, and I've been happy working with different families, helping them get through the transition process and finally into self-determination. My son just started his 3rd year in the self-determination program.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Hard to follow up, but Martha, I'm going to ask you to try.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Martha Grajeda. I work with Allied Comprehensive Services, and I'm an independent facilitator. Something that really inspired me to become what we call the IF, in short. I worked with the Regional Center for about 10 years in different capacities within the center system. I felt like I wasn't providing the attention, the assistance, the education that families really need entering the regional center systems due to the volume of the cases that we had as a regional center employee. And that was one of the reasons why this position of independent facilitator really spoke to me, because I knew that it was a different type of assistance that you're providing. It's almost like you're working hand in hand with the family to really accomplish one goal, and it's to really provide those services to either the self-advocate or the individual or the family that is really looking for those services that are really gonna move this person towards meeting their goals. So that's part of the reason why I thought that being an IF was going to be something that was going to be really different for me and for the families that I provided. You learn all these things working as an employee, and it's like, how could you not share this with people that really need it? So that's the main reason why I was inspired to become an IF. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. I totally empathize with the so much to do, so little time part of the regional centers. Melissa?
My name is Melissa Jones. I am a parent of a 32-year-old daughter who was actually selected to be part of the self-determination program through the lottery system. So we just started year 4. And I just kind of trained myself. You know, she was my first client, if you want to say. And like many of us, I decided, you know, I think I can do this and help other people. In the past, I've worked at United Cerebral Palsy of Orange County, where I ran the Parent Connection program and also their respite program. I've been the manager of a day program here in Southern California, as well as provided direct support to adults that lived independently in their home as an ILS staff. So I've kind of done a lot of different things with the families, with the clients, and just decided that I would go ahead and start helping people through the independent facilitator process to help them get into self-determination. So thank you so much for allowing me to be here today.
Thank you, Melissa. Tamara, you're sort of famous and you're up.
Oh gosh. I'm Tamara Pauly, independent facilitator, and I sort of got involved in this whole movement since 2015 with Judy Mark. I was going and doing the meetings in person back in the day. We were doing that around the round table, and it's been fun to watch this movement grow. I have about 90 families in self-determination now, and I love what I do, and it's really important. But one thing that if you're looking for an independent facilitator, all of the people on this call are amazing independent facilitators, and you can't go wrong with choosing anybody in this room as an independent facilitator. They all have experience. I know everyone's work, and I know Tim Jin. He's laughing.
I mean, I kind of feel like I'm in the presence of royalty right now. So like, I don't think I've ever been so honored in my life personally.
Anyway, and I just want to say that anybody on this call, you can pretty much trust. And Naomi has been an amazing spearheading force for North Bay and turning them around. So you guys, I think that, I mean, we're all very qualified, and you can't go wrong. Anyway, that's my spiel. Bye.
Thanks, Tamara. Carola?
Thank you. My name is Carola Camacho Marinan. I'm a parent. I have 2 kids. One is 14 and the other is 7. They happen to have a very complex disabilities profile, and we were stuck on the traditional model, trying to, you know, make this one model fits all needs. So my children was always on a struggle. So in 2015, I became aware of self-determination and became a member of the local advisory committee and my renal center. And since then, I have been progressing my knowledge, and then my kids got selected in the lottery and are on their 3rd year on self-determination. I also became more aware and familiar with the disparities because I'm Hispanic, bilingual. So I decided to become a facilitator also to serve these families. And I specialize in young children with very complex profiles.
And Carola is also fluent in Spanish, which I think, as is Elizabeth and Martha. And I think that's important to highlight, that we do have people, there are people available who can support people in their native language as well. Suli?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm the founder of SEREC, which stands for Special Education Research, Advocacy, and Consulting. It's a special education consulting company, and IPP, IEP, parent training, and SDP, independent facilitation, are some of the things that I do. And the main goal of SEREC is providing families reliable information based on scientific research. And I'm also a project scientist at the UCLA Center for Autism Research and Treatment, where I conduct research on autism interventions and equity, diversity issues, and service provider and parent training. So education and advocacy are something that I'm very passionate about and what I've been doing for many years. So it was kind of natural for me to kind of expand the scope of my work to serve families who decide to embark on the SDP journey and helping them get what they want in their lives. And I also provide services in Korean.
Thank you, Dr. Ridley. Helen?
Hi, everyone. I'm Helen Reese, and I have a 15-year-old in his 3rd year of self-determination at RCB. Love the program, and the single reason I'm a independent facilitator is because of Linda and John Ostro, whom some of us in this room know and love and miss dearly. She's the reason I was on the local advisory committee at Westside in 2015, 2014. She's the reason that I started working with families in Mandarin, and I've continued to do this work because, not just because of Linda, but because I think that more people should have access to this program. And our motto, Linda and I, we are working ourselves out of a job so that people can manage and truly be self-determined.
And I love that. And I loved Linda. She was the independent facilitator for the first client I ever got through when I worked at the regional center. And she basically taught me how to do my job, or at least watched me learn how to do my job, because I definitely didn't know at that point. Last but definitely not least, Vivian.
Thank you all for your amazing introductions and just getting to know more about your backgrounds. And I have to piggyback on top of what Tamara said. You are amongst a great group here. And I just have to really give lots of kudos and shout outs to Naomi. She is my life vest in a lot of situations that are very unique. And she's just so on point with everything. So, I mean, I'm just so grateful to have her as a resource, as well as Tamara and you know, the whole team here. So you are definitely in good hands. So I am the proud sister of a 33-year-old regional center consumer and a stepsister to a 41-year-old regional center consumer who I proudly transitioned to self-determination. Their first official first date was February 1st. So just a few days ago. You know, I kind of have the genes that my dad kind of passed down to me. It was my sophomore year of high school. I shouldn't have told my sister's age because now you guys will figure it out. But it was my sophomore year of high school when my my sister was born, and then thereafter seeing my dad heavily advocate for her at her IEPs was just so inspirational to me. And I kind of teetered between going to law school or pursuing studies in psychology, and I ended up choosing the psychology route, but I've come full circle because the advocacy part of law has definitely played into this and into what we do today. And I left my clinical work and experience as a psychologist. My background is also in autism spectrum disorders, as well as just child development. And so I've done that for about 25 years and just love what I'm doing now with independent facilitation. I'm part of an amazing group at B&D Assessment and Consulting Services. I think my business partner, Christina's here as well. So we are both independent facilitators and definitely bring many hats based on our backgrounds and experiences to this process, which we both very much enjoy. And, you know, we're good out-of-box thinkers, but we definitely want to be sure that, you know, parents and participants in their circles of support are part of this process. We encourage it, we embrace it, and we will bat for you all the way. So this is just a little bit about me and my background, but I'm so glad to be here and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Vivian. I laughed when you said the law school part, because there have been times my husband has been like, did you become a lawyer when I wasn't?
I know.
It's a long story. I'll talk about it later.
Yeah.
So the next question I want to ask, it's going to be for everybody, but there's a lot out there, you know, the negative parts of self-determination. And I do not want to minimize any struggles that people have had transitioning in, but also there is so much beauty in this program, and there is so much positivity, and there are so many good things. So please don't violate HIPAA, but I'd like you guys to share quickly, under a minute, a positive story of how somebody benefited from self-determination that you can share with us. And I honestly, because I know that this is something you might have to think about for a second, once you're ready, presenters, just raise your hand and I'll call on you, because that way, okay, Tamara, I was probably going to pick you first anyway, because I don't care if I put you on the spot.
Well, what, oddly enough, one of our success stories is a self-advocate who is on this call, Santiago Villalobos.
That's true.
Santiago, would you like to tell your story?
We would need to unmute him, which you can actually do, Tamara. If he's okay with it, you can unmute him.
Santiago, hold on.
Mhm.
Are you there? Is he
he's
there?
He's there, but he can't unmute. We have to.
Okay, so
but you can, or I can, once I remember.
what would you please do that?
I'm doing it. I'm working on it. Give me a second. We all
Hold
know
on, I said ask to unmute. Santiago, you have to hold still.
There we go.
There you go. Perfect.
Yeah, you muted me before.
Turn up your volume a little bit.
You hear me now?
A little bit louder.
You might have your hand over the microphone, Tim.
Yeah, just hold on a second.
Okay.
Okay. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but you are one of my shining examples.
True. And the program is nothing about me without me. So self-advocates are a huge part of the program. Not the only part by far, but they are a huge part of it.
Okay, Santiago, are you there? You ready to go? I see your hand.
Yeah.
Okay. You want to say something?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Thanks a lot. So I was just to be on camera, so what do you want me to do? Like say my story?
Okay, you can just say how self-determination has helped you in your life.
All right.
You can talk about Elizabeth.
Started like a love.
You can talk about Elizabeth and what she's
like
doing for you.
Oh yeah, she's like helped me like find another job. I just got off another job right now, like an hour ago, and then she helped me like give me the back to school and help me become my SC.
Yeah, and what and what about the gym? What have you been doing with the gym?
I've been going to the gym, losing weight almost every day. Like I went yesterday, and probably go tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. And how do you get around town? What do you use?
I use the Uber to get around town here and there.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you have a job coach. You've gotten a new job. You've lost weight.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting around by Uber. You don't have to take the public buses right now. I kind of think, you guys, this is a win-win. Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to add, my friend?
Yeah, like pretty soon. I hope to have what's it called?
You're going to
pretty soon. Yeah.
What are you going to school for?
To become in psychology, to become an SC.
He wants to become a service coordinator at the regional center.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Santiago.
Oh, one more thing.
Yes.
Like it's way better than the traditional system, because the traditional system, I had to fit in their box, like center base and stuff.
Yeah.
But like I found me outgrew that system.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tamara. Thank you, Santiago. Excellent improvisation. Wonderful creativity. What self-determination is all about. I see we have a hand up, so I think my first priority is going to be getting to that hand because I have a feeling I know what it is. You should be able to unmute.
Kathy, Elizabeth, Nancy is a lady, It's a women.
So we're talking tonight about.
Molly. And
Thanks.
Nancy is a lady.
So we're talking tonight about independent facilitators. So I think we're going to go on to our next question about those. And then hopefully that's going to answer your question, okay?
Right.
So is there anybody else who would like to share a success story, any of the facilitators?
I can share one.
Yeah, whoever. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so there are a lot of families with unmet needs, and these families, they don't even know they have the unmet needs because there's nobody telling them that you're missing out on something. So now families have somebody on their side giving the individualized attention, consultation, and providing knowledge and guidance, and really identifying what they need. So this is actually the prep work before starting the SDP, but it's such a crucial step, and it helps families secure funding that can be utilized in SDP. And all of my clients have gone through this process, and it had boosted their budget because I work with a lot of minority families with language barrier issues. And by working with them, they were able to gain a lot more services before they actually go into SDP. So yeah.
Perfect. Martha, I'm going to volunteer you next just because you're next on my screen and that'll keep things organized. Then Carola, then Melissa.
Sure, no problem. I was recently working with a family that had kind of aging parents in retirement age that were really providing a lot of the financial support for their adult son. And through the process of self-determination, we were able to identify services that he really wanted for his life, and were able to get money in the budget to provide these services, therefore relieving a lot of the financial burden that these family members had. And I think without self-determination, we don't know if we would have been able to really got them approved, so that this individual really had a preference of and choice of who they worked with. And I know this is a big thing of self-determination, but this is a big success story because it is common, but it's also individualized to each person. So I think that knowing that there are alternatives to services, and knowing that having someone on your corner to really go out there and fight the fight with you, I think it's really important. And I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Martha. And I think that's also, I would agree with that. Like, I think it's hard for parents as they're getting older. And I think self-determination gives a way to make sure there is a circle of support that's not just you. Carola?
So the case I want to share, or the experience I want to share, is with a young child. He was 8 years old, but already went through a lot of speech therapy, and there were not any success. There was nothing really working for him. So I first transitioned him. When I transitioned him, we determined that communication services was a big need. So we used our creative thinking out of the box and create a program, and we engaged a speech pathologist who was able to go with him in the community and do a more organic approach, more holistic approach. So now he started communicating in a better way, and so I feel that has been really a goal that the family wasn't dreaming to achieve, but the program is really working for him.
Thank you, Carola. And I asked if you need creative ways to describe services. Carola is your woman. She thinks of stuff that I would never think of. Melissa? You're muted. And I can't unmute you because you're another co-host, so that's why I did it.
Yes, I was able to help a family here in Southern California who, unfortunately, their son was, I'll say, butting heads with his parents and sibling. And so he was living in a group home when I first started. He had a very good relationship with his support staff at the day program. And to make a very long story short, he left the group home and ended up moving in with his support staff and her family. And so with the help of self-determination, we had the means to allow him to do that and pay the support staff to be his caregiver. So it's just, I wish I was more talented, but I'm sure it would be a HIPAA thing. But Mom just sent me a picture of him with the Christmas tree with all of the family. And it was just really warmed my heart to see how happy he was in his new environment. So that's what I wanted to share.
I love it. And I think happiness. I got a video today from one of my families of a music class, their first music class. And it was the same thing, like the joy. Vivian and then Elizabeth.
So I have a client who's now 31, and she actually used to be my client when she was 5. So the parents were actually looking for an independent facilitator, came across my information, and I've known this family for years. And in her first year, as she was transitioning into her first year, they struggled finding an appropriate community integration or day program for her. They weren't happy with the choices that they were given. And, they explored other ones in their community and weren't able to find it. And then finally we're just like, you know what, just forget it. We'll do without it. And I said, but it's still an identified need. Just because you can't find any shouldn't be a reason not to be able to access those services. So I said, tell me a little bit. And they said, well, it's just her schedule is too busy. And I said, well, tell me a little bit about what that schedule entails. Well, she comes and helps with filing and doing administrative work for our congregation. She also goes and volunteers at this organization for this many hours a week. And then it was like this, and this. And I was like, sounds like you guys already have kind of your own customized program that and so we kind of, with thinking outside the box, also created and customized her own day program, or I like to say pre-vocational or vocational program, which has been great. She's doing things she loves with people she trusts and feels comfortable with, that have been part of her community for years, and truly lives out that self-determined dream. So it was just a really nice success story.
Thank you, Vivian. And then last but not least for this question, Elizabeth.
Yes, hi. I know we all have success stories. It's hard to figure out, okay, which one do I want to talk about? But for a lot of times, like you said, Naomi, we might not hear from people because they're out enjoying their lives, and then we'll get a picture or something. So, but I do have one. So I have an adult high achieving person that I was working with, and very, very high potential for lots of wonderful things. And but he wasn't really accessing much of a regional center. And like another person mentioned before, that we're able to help them maximize the services that they should have been getting in the traditional services, and let them know, hey, you're eligible for this, or it looks like from what you're telling me, you're eligible for maybe some transportation assistance and things that they didn't know about. His mom was in tears because she said, I didn't know that my children can get these things. And this particular mom has 4 children in the regional center system. So so that was a benefit, for everyone to know, hey, as your IF, we're here to help you gain as much as you're eligible for, for the regional system to be able to work the way it's supposed to work. But in his particular case, he was able to hire his dad, who's like his main number one fan, his mom and dad, to help him in transportation and things like that. He is getting his AA degree. He's about to go into getting his bachelor's. So we're getting all the college resources ready for him. But he recently got elected for a city office. He was elected for a position in the city, and he's all excited about that. And he got sworn in, and he wanted me to go, and I couldn't go that day. And but I was really excited for him and excited for his family.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And I think that highlights something that I think is a great thing to bring up, which is there are people who don't, quote, fit the mold of regional center services. And I don't like the word high functioning, but also I don't know a better one right this second. So please forgive me for using that word. But sometimes people who are twice exceptional, for example, the traditional regional center services don't work for them. And self-determination can really help those people receive different, more creative services. So we've talked about the good, and I'm not going to say we're going to talk about the bad, but I think we all know that there's some myths about self-determination, some things you hear that you're like, that is so not true. So raise your hand, facilitators, if you would like to share a myth about self-determination that you have heard and that you wish people would stop believing. I can start with one which is, unfortunately, as much as I wish this might not be true, they're not just going to give you money for every single thing that you want. And I'm sorry, but the Disneyland tickets are not a thing. But if you do go to Disneyland, please bring me, because I like Disneyland. Carola, you're first, then Vivian, then Melissa.
So this happened with a young client that I had. So the mother went to the orientation and they told her that she will be paying my fees instead of paying the services for her kid. And then they also told her that he wouldn't qualify to many services or many have a significant fund. So they told her that it was not worth it to go on self-determination for minimal help she will get.
Yes, I think sometimes, unfortunately, regional centers, they're still learning too. And if anybody has terrible insomnia and would like to hear me explain how the regional centers are struggling and why, please let me know. I can certainly help you get some sleep, but sometimes things come out of people's mouths and I'm like, that's not true. For example, I had a service coordinator last week call me and tell me that the family would not have a budget because all their services were in the traditional system, so therefore there wouldn't be a budget. However, I will give credit to the director of that regional center who, when I brought that up to him, sat with that service coordinator and manager himself personally and quizzed them until they understood it. So there are people who are making a real effort to make this happen. Melissa, you are up next for your favorite myth about self-determination, favorite or least favorite or whatever.
Well, backing up to what you said about Disneyland, no, they won't pay for Disneyland, but they would pay for a support staff to go with you to Disneyland. So it can be successful. I think it's just really the services. You know, I was just in a meeting the other day and this young lady types to communicate. And we have had numerous meetings with Regional Center. And they keep adding a little bit of services, adding a little bit of services. And mom said, but you're not listening to what my daughter needs. She needs communication support. And they go, I'm sorry, we don't do that. And I go, oh my gosh, that's not true. That's not true. And not to call anybody out, but this regional center has service coordinators that specialize in children's services, and then they have people that specialize in adult services. So this young lady is right in the middle there. And so she was like, well, maybe I can reach out to this service coordinators that do the adult division and see. But they were like, no, we don't do communication support. I'm like, yes, you do, you know. So it's crazy that, and unfortunately, most families are going to say, okay, you know, you don't do that and move on.
So I think, you know, that highlights, thank you, Melissa, the importance of having an independent facilitator who really understands what services are available in self-determination and in the traditional services. And Tamara, could you share your favorite or least favorite myth about self-determination that you have heard?
Oh, there we go. Okay. Hi. First of all, self-determination is not necessarily for everyone. It needs to be evaluated on a person-by-person basis. The way you evaluate that is with a good person-centered plan, okay? You don't just say, oh, I want social skills, I want, adaptive skills, I want all these things. No, you write in your person-centered plan, and from that you get your needs, the basic needs and unmet needs. So it all comes down to a good independent facilitator, which is, they're all in this room, and writing a plan that will tell a story about your person at that moment in time. I'm going to start coughing, so that's it.
Awesome, Tamara. Thank you. Except for coughing, don't cough. Martha shared one in the chat that I want to just read out loud really quickly. There was a myth shared to a family by a service coordinator that regional center can only cover 2 services at a time. That is not true. For some people, it might be 2 services because it's based on individualized needs. Some people need 2, some people need 20. It really depends. Sue, you're up next for your favorite or least favorite myth about self-determination, and then we'll take Elizabeth before we move on.
Yeah, least favorite. So a myth I'm going to share is that what you heard last month will always true in the following months. So this is not true because you need to expect changes because SDP is still in its early stages. And it's not just with your particular regional center, but it's also DDS, financial management service, FMS companies, and service providers in your community. They might change their policy about accepting SDP clients. So it's really important to stay up to date with the new rules and policies by attending meetings like this, and also by communicating with your independent facilitators.
Very true. I call it a moving target. Elizabeth, last but not least, your least favorite myth.
I have 2, I guess. Well, one is my budget is going to stay the same. There's not much I can do with it. It's only 5,000 or it's only 7,000. So I'm just not going to join self-determination. And that's not true. Our budgets tend to go up. Like I said, we help you really look at the purchase service policies and see what you are really eligible for so that we can, show you that in the person-centered plan that you're eligible for it, justify the need so that your child can get that added into their budget and they can start their services right away in the traditional system until you get, into self-determination. Also, I've been hearing lately like, oh, people are just trying to pad their budget so they can have a high budget and self-determination. And I hate that. I can't stand it because that's not what we're doing. What we're doing is addressing the unmet needs. We are addressing those unmet needs that nobody addressed before, and shame on them. Why are I'm sorry to say, but they should be more like, well, this reflects on you than anybody else. And then also, we're not only addressing unmet need, but we're addressing disparity at the same time. So the budget should go up. I remember my very first budget negotiation meeting, and Tamara Pauly was there. And I don't know if you remember this, but this is like 3 years ago. So everything was kind of new. And my budget meeting was like the first one from that regional center. So like everyone was there. And they told me, because Miss Tamara said, let's show up with the spending plan already, even though I didn't have my budget yet, just so they can know like how you want to spend, what you want to do for your child. So I showed up and I had like a $30,000 spending plan. And they looked at me and they said, Ms. Cuevas, you have a $30,000 spending plan on a $7,000 budget. And I don't even think we took 2 seconds. And I said, and that is because, my child's needs. I don't know why his budget is only $7,000. Can you tell me why his budget is only $7,000? That is what we're here to address, because it was, I think I was like, well, I don't know. You're the ones deciding this budget, but my child has all these other needs. You know his,
So,
you know his,
Elizabeth, I'm not trying to cut you off, but
oh, no, that's all I was gonna say. Thank you.
Elizabeth kind of gave me the perfect segue to answer a question from the chat and to kind of an overarching question, which is how can we know what services our kids qualify for? And the answer to that question is a person-centered plan. Find an independent facilitator who does a good person-centered plan who can help find your child's individualized needs. They're not going to be the same as every other child. They are not based on diagnosis. They're not 100% based on age. They're based on need. And so because of that, it's really important that you have an independent facilitator who can help you with that. The other thing I want to just point out, and this is not always the most popular opinion I have, is that not every budget increases and not every budget needs to increase. Budgets are based on needs. I don't give people numbers. I've seen budgets that are 20,000 that meet the needs or 2,000. I've seen budgets that are 200,000 that meet the needs. I'm not going to give you an estimate of what your budget could or should be because I don't know, because we need to do a person-centered plan and the rates are different at every single regional center. And there is so much that goes into it. I'm also just going to take this opportunity to answer the question of, do parents pay for independent facilitator services? This is not to say that some people do not pay out of pocket for certain services, because they do, and that is the best choice for them. And I am not going to say that that's the best choice for them. However, transitional services to help a participant get into self-determination can be paid for through the regional center. The provider should have a code to be paid through the regional center directly. And typically you will not have to pay out of pocket because the regional center will reimburse the provider directly. That amount of money, which I am not going to put a number on because there's a bunch of stuff changing and it's not something you need to worry about because that's my job to run my business. That amount of money does not get added to your budget and it does not get removed from your budget. It just is. It's separate. Now, after the transition to self-determination is complete, if you choose to have ongoing independent facilitator services, which is a choice and not everybody needs to, and as Helen said, she and Linda were working on putting themselves out of business, and Tamara tells me regularly that she's trying to get her families to fire her because they don't need her anymore. However, if you choose to have ongoing independent facilitator services, those are paid for from the spending plan. And by law, the regional center is not allowed to increase the budget to account for that cost. So you'll need to allocate money from elsewhere to cover that cost. But most times people do not have an out-of-pocket cost for this. And because of how much overhead is paid for traditional regional center services, you'd be surprised how much money there is kind of, I don't want to say leftover, but available for reallocations like that. And Melissa, I hope you don't mind, I'm going to ask you to put your thought in the chat because I'm going to move on to our next question. And this specific question is, I want some independent facilitators to weigh in on if there are any cultural, linguistic considerations that you think are really important in the work that you do. And I'm aware I'm putting a few people on the spot right now, but I hope they will forgive me. Elizabeth, appreciate you.
Because we're often translating, in my case, Spanish, we need to have longer meetings. You know, we need to advocate for longer meetings because half of it is translating. Also I do provide the, we all provide the person-centered plan and the, the needed languages also. And we advocate for the family to be able to receive any and all recommendations, evaluations, all of that in the language specified of their choice. But definitely I see right off the bat that, just having a 1-hour meeting with the regional center, we're not going to get far because we need that time for translation also.
Very, very valid. I do not speak fluent Spanish. I'm working on it with my Duolingo every night. It's not going well, but I'm trying really hard. But one thing that I've really learned is that, I really feel like Spanish uses 3 words for every 2 words that English uses. And so as a result, it literally takes longer. And that wasn't something that I would have thought of myself. Carola?
Yes, I think the barrier I'm seeing, and I'm also a trainer at Autism Society of Los Angeles. I'm training Latino IFs. And so something that we're really struggling with is the literal translation of documents, because that's not, culturally appropriate. And when we translate the documents, I realize the students on our training are not really understanding well what the program is and, how to follow the steps. So I think on the translation and then training them in their own language, and if we're training IEFs in Spanish, let's do it. The training in Spanish is going to be very important to have IEFs that are capable to use all those skills across the board.
I think that's a good thing to share. Carola, I agree. I ran meetings with translators, and there was a time I ended a meeting, literally ended the meeting. We claimed technical issues because I spoke enough Spanish to know that the translator was not translating what I was saying. And we ended the meeting rather than further confuse the family, and we rescheduled it. And we hated rescheduling it because then the family has to wait. But nobody was getting anything good out of this session. And I learned after that, I went to my boss and I said, the only translator we're going to use is this one person that I trust and that I know is doing it right, because the families deserve to hear it right. Because I think, my friends joke, speaking regional center is like speaking another language. Speaking self-determination is another dialect of that language. And translating regional center and self-determination specific words into another language is no easy task. So I think that's really important to keep in mind, that it can't be just literal. Tamara and then Sue.
Okay, I unmuted myself. I'm really proud of myself. I found that one of the most fun things about my job is learning about the other cultures that I've been exposed to. I've had children that were in the process of transformation from male to female. I have very, very Orthodox Jewish families, and learning about the cultures and what they need specifically. You have to pivot and you say, okay, well, I can't do this, I have to do that. And it's actually making your job is making sure that the regional center pivots with you, and that they understand what they have to do. I mean, I did a PCP in sign language with a translator, and I don't think using a translator is really an effective way to do a person-centered plan because of the cultural differences. I think that if you speak only Vietnamese, it's really good to get somebody who understands your culture and the nuances, rather than just, as Naomi said, just translating the words, because there's also meanings behind the words that would blow right past me. So I think that's really fun to. It's been fun for me personally to learn about how other people live and what they believe, and try to make self-determination work for them.
Thank you, Tamara. And then Sue.
Yeah, I 100% agree with what Tamara said. Just having a translator who has no knowledge of SDP versus an IF who understands SDP and speak your native language, it's a whole, it's a whole new thing. And also another comment I would make is that I think this whole system still has a long way to go in terms of cultural and linguistic considerations. Like, the system doesn't fully understand the barriers that families have to go through. Like, even texting and emailing English-speaking providers can be a challenge for some families. So having a bilingual IF that can help you would be really valuable. Something you could do right now is like requesting interpretation and translation of the IPP document. from your regional center, you could still request that. And some regional centers would actually put that as a purchase of service, and it could give you some additional funding in your budget. And that budget doesn't, if you go into SDP, you don't have to use it for translation per se, but what you could do is you can find the service provider who can speak your language. So I have clients who needed Korean interpretation, so they requested it from the regional center, they got the funding, and then once they moved to SDP, with that funding, they went to a Taekwondo provider in their community, and the provider speaks Korean and English, so they can communicate with the parents and update the progress in the child in the parents' native language. So in SDP, it can work really beautifully if you actually plan for it.
And I think, I think you're right too. I think the system has ways to go, and I think it has to look at larger and different ethnicities and linguistic considerations. I've recently discovered the disparity in the Orthodox Jewish community, and I never would have thought about that until I found myself in the middle of it over and over again and went, oh, I had never thought of that. One caution I will just give, I was a regional center manager. I oversaw self-determination. It was the regional center's responsibility to translate the IPP. Therefore, we pulled the funding from the budget because otherwise we would have been double funding it because we were gonna have to translate it regardless, and we couldn't duplicate the funding. So I don't know how every regional center is doing it, and I don't pretend to be every regional center. I have been recovering from the regional center for 14 months and counting.
You're
However,
right. It's different for each regional center. So you have to check.
There are 21 separate regional centers, and I cannot specifically speak for how North Bay does that because I don't think that has come up. We're going to take a few quick questions now. I'm going to start with Lilia. I am asking that questions be held to about 1 minute or less, just because we want to make sure that we are time sensitive and that we can get to a few more questions from our presenters, but still end on time this evening. So Lilia, I'm going to ask you to unmute first, and then Anna, you'll be second.
Hello, my name is Lilia Valitova. My son, Artur Yosef Valitov Shafrir, is moving towards SDP. We have a lot of difficulties since last year. If I go about Emlyn, I don't want to go about Emlyn, but then we have essential pay, and we were not allowed to go to SDP. Another things I want to mention, like PCP, I would like to be have some Russian translations towards like PCP, IPP, because the service coordinator who comes to my house, she speaks very fast, and she doesn't want to give me a paperwork so I can read at home. She wants to read very quickly, but for me, even my English is pretty good. I would like to have a Russian translation in front of me so I can follow up what she wants, what she means by that. And I have my own version of IPP, which kind of like we have difficulties to come into common ground. Then I noticed that in PCP, I wasn't so experienced with PCP, and now I would like to redo it. But this is questions again about legal language. So NBRC would like to have more generic resources, and like if the mother can do it, you don't have to pay for that. But I kind of think the language of PCP, IPP have to be changed and more clear that parents need support. And I had argument with service coordinator at all. I need support in the text of IPP, so I will get support. Otherwise, if you put every mother takes of everything, we can't get support because legal language is used for that method that the parent has to do everything herself.
So we're not able to speak to specific questions or specific cases for confidentiality reasons this evening. But the big thing that I would really stress to you and to everybody is that if you want a specific service like a translator at your IPP, that needs to go through the regional center. And I think it's important also to ensure that you interview a few different person-centered planners or independent facilitators to find one who is the best fit for you and who really meets your needs. and who can really assist you. You also referenced generic resources, and Vivian put this in the chat as well, and I meant to highlight it and I missed out. But the regional center overall is held to a law known as the Lanterman Act. And I am going to put Abraham on the spot because he knows the two links I want him to put in the chat, which are plain language versions of the Lanterman Act that can help people learn about its rights under the Lanterman Act and Consumer's Guide, Abraham. And they can help people learn about their rights and what they are entitled to through regional center services. But one of the laws very specifically does say that generic resources, which are things that the regional center does not pay for, are required to be used before regional center funding. And that's not because the regional center likes to say no to you, because I promise you, having worked at a regional center, nobody got into this field because they like saying no to people. They didn't wake up in the morning and be like, yes, I just want to say no to everybody. That didn't happen. But they are held to a variety of laws and requirements that they have to stay with. And one of those is generic resources. But I do think it's very important to make sure that you find an independent facilitator who understands those laws. And I also highly recommend checking out the two links that thankfully Abraham can read my mind and is putting into the chat, because they are plain language, easy to understand explanations of people's rights under the law, the expectations of the regional centers, and also the expectations of participants, families, etc., because everybody has requirements. When you went through the orientation for self-determination, one of the 5 tenets of self-determination was responsibility. And that's not just responsibility for the regional center, it's responsibility for the participant, it's responsibility for the family, etc. So there's a lot, I agree there's a lot going on. I am sorry you've had a challenging experience transitioning in. Like I said, for confidentiality reasons, we can't go into specific scenarios, but those would be my general suggestions for how to move forward. You might also be able to, we did put the contact information for independent facilitators here this evening in the chat, and it's possible that you can reach out to any of them that you may like or like to speak to and see if they would be able to help with your specific situation.
Thank you. And Russian translation, please, because everything what I do, I still legal language and Lanterman all requires Russian translation because there are too many wrinkles in that law.
So I completely agree. That would be a conversation to have with your service coordinator. They are able to put that in place for you.
Thank you.
Anna, you're going to be up next. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Okay, hi guys. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Здравствуйте, я по-русски говорю. И если вы хотите text me. I just pop up because the way is like I'm an independent facilitator, but I'm a parent provider, and but is there a possible way to become your child independent facilitator? Because technically right now, like by myself, I'm doing IF and then like doing everything. There's no IF, but like, yeah.
The law does not allow the parent of a minor under the age of 18 to be paid for providing services to them under self-determination. And that is because they are considered to be a legally responsible party, and legally responsible parties cannot be paid to provide services. If a child is over the age of 18 and it is the child's choice to be the independent, for the parent to be the independent facilitator, and they have the appropriate training, then they are able to be the independent facilitator in that case. But one thing to keep in mind is that independent facilitators can only provide independent facilitation services in the spending plan. They can't provide any other service. They can't provide any training services. They can't provide any care services, etc., because independent facilitators are supposed to be truly independent. And so it's very important that they provide only that service. But if your child is over the age of 18, you may be able to be paid to be their independent facilitator. But if they are under the age of 18, it is not allowed under the law. I hope that answered the question. I'm going to take one more question from Tim Jen because he's famous, and I mean, how could I not? And then we are going to move on to our next question for the providers. Tim, I believe I asked you to unmute.
Hey all, my name is Tim and I am in my second year of SDP and it's been great. I am also the co-director Disability Voices United in our empowerment programs. I have a question for you all. What are you telling your clients with the FMS problem that aren't taking any new clients because there is a waiting list? Also, many regional centers are denying social rec. How are you handling that with your clients at regional centers? I have the best independent facilitators that fit to my needs. They are excellent, but they also don't sugarcoat anything to me and our dialogue are always very direct, which I respect and like. I have a very high budget because I require 24-hour care, but self-determination is not all about the budget. If the participant is happy of what they have now, the budget doesn't really matter because they are enjoying their lives from what they have. Self-determination is not all about increasing the budget. Self-determination should be up to the individual because we are all unique.
I completely agree with Tim. Also, Tim's staff make like the best meals ever. And I have a habit of looking at pictures of them at 2 a.m. And then I'm like, great, now I'm hungry. And it's 2 a.m. So Tim, my diet gone. Tim actually took some words out of my mouth though, because we were going to ask independent facilitators how they are handling the financial management services or FMS agencies. And for people who might not be familiar with those agencies are the only required vendored service that a participant in self-determination must have. I see Tamara has her hand up. I'm going to quickly answer I'm putting myself on the spot momentarily, then I'm going to take Tamara. But I'm going to say, again, possibly an unpopular opinion, because I know not everybody's having this experience. I am not finding that the FMS agencies are delaying a lot of my clients, because by the time they get the stuff done that they need to get done to get the staff and the vendors onboarded, it has already hit the time of the start date, because it takes time. There's first aid, there's CPR, there's a live scan, and it took 3 weeks to clear. There's paperwork, there's a business license, there's a tax license, there's a this license, there's things I've never heard of licenses. However, on a grand scale, I will say, I think we all know that the financial management service agencies are definitely in a crisis. And I will hope that the state is going to do something to improve on that. However, I found that if I reach out to FMS agencies, which I do on behalf of my clients, as soon as we have a budget and spending plan, we're not seeing huge delays. I realize I may be unique in that. Tamara, I'm going to have you take it from there.
Naomi, you live a privileged life.
I do. I'm having homemade double-decker birthday cake downstairs. I live such a privileged life.
No, my families, if they have everything done today, they will be starting in May, and that's across a couple different FMSs. I do not take clients because of it. But it's hard for everyone when they're ready to go and they have to wait 2 months when everything is completely done. But that's just the way it is. And I make sure that they get the services they want in between time. So like the social rec, I haven't had a problem with social recreation in the regional centers that I work with. My families, I encourage them to put in the application for a social rec, get the assessments for adaptive skills or social skills or whatever it is that they need. So we use that time to get the assessments done and everything, and then the budgets will reflect the addition if indeed they do qualify for those kinds of services. So yeah, Naomi, yeah, we do work on it, work on other stuff, but still it's they have to wait. That's just the way it is.
I think Tamara touched on something. It's one of my favorite quotes that I made up, which is people shouldn't have to wait for self-determination to have their needs met. I think we all try to be very upfront with participants and families. Like, there is a waiting list for some of these financial management services. This is going to take time. I typically say 6 to 9 months from beginning to end, but that doesn't mean that in the meantime, if you have a need for more respite or you have a need for social rec, that you shouldn't receive those services. I'm also really glad that Tamara brought up the second part of Tim's question, because I got distracted by thinking about the food that Tim's staff makes and I completely forgot it. But I also agree with Tamara. In most cases, there's a glaring exception, but it is not North Bay. I'm not seeing a lot of difficulty getting social recreational services approved, but I will just say one thing is the typical parental responsibility piece, because the Lanterman Act very specifically says that the regional centers can only fund costs that exceed that of what a typically developing child of the same age without a disability would cost. And I am not a parent, but I know that living is expensive right now. I understand that having children and their social activities can be very expensive, but that is regardless of their disability. So I think that to some degree, sometimes that plays in, but I would love to hear from Carola on her thoughts on those questions, because they're great questions, Tim, and thank you for sharing them.
So I have experience as a parent with 2 of the models. And then when I have this conversation with my clients, we're going to need to wait for co-employer for this long. Will you like to consider the sole employer? And so when we go about the responsibilities, I walk them through the process and the involvement. Some of the parents say, I can do it. I don't want to wait for 3-4 months for the co-employer. I rather get more involved, but I want my kid going in the program as soon as possible. So it's just demystify the fact that sole employer is so much responsibility and so much work. And so that has helped a few of my families going quicker and self-determination.
I think that's a great point, because just throwing it out there, if you are here and you are the parent of a child with a disability, you already do a lot of things every single day that most of us would step back and say, I don't know if I could do that. And you do it every single day, and you've been doing it for a long time, and you are fully, I'm confident, able to do so sole employer. And many sole employer agencies do have lower wait lists, which is not something I had remembered. I did just put into the chat a list of the FMS agencies so that you can do that research on your own. We're going to take Vivian and then Martha, and then we'll move on to probably our last question for the evening. So Vivian?
Yeah, I was just going to add to the social rec comment. One thing that can kind of easily help facilitate that discussion with the regional center is finding out if they have a service standard or not for social rec. Some of the regional centers have a nice, healthy service standard. And so it also helps the person-centered planning process to kind of know that up front, or be able to kind of look at the exceptions to those activities. So that's something that is a nice kind of out-of-box thinking strategy that could be approached when you're going through the person-centered plan process.
And Abraham is going to pop the North Bay Regional Center's service standards into the chat for people to review if they would like to. Thank you, Vivian. Thank you, Abraham and Martha.
Yeah, sorry. Well, I guess to answer the FMS question first, I mean, what we try to do is just really be transparent from the beginning with the families, to just kind of let them know that this is the expectation and this is really not, something that we can control too much of, but we try to facilitate as much as we can, and we try to get to that certified budget as soon as we can so that we can move forward with identifying and helping the families identify their FMS agency. In terms of the social rec, you know, what Vivian mentioned with this, their guidelines, and also identifying what vendored services the regional center already has in place in order to be able to see if there is a service there that may be used in the interim. And also, you know, we look at those other traditional services that are done through the traditional purchase of service. We look at the participant directed services. I know we don't talk a lot about it, but those are big. There's so many services that can be covered now through that option, that doesn't require for you to use a vendored agency. You can use a person of choice through that, and that has actually come in handy for a few of the people that we've worked with while they were waiting to get into the self-determination program. And I'll be honest, in one or two cases, they stayed with that service and they chose not to do self-determination because they actually were getting their services met through this other program. So, you know, we try to be transparent, and honestly, we tell our families at the end of the day, if this program's not for you, that's fine. We're here to support you no matter what. So, yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Martha. And I lied. I'm going to take Helen. I haven't heard enough from her tonight.
Thank you. So just a really quick add on to that question about, so the FMS issue, right? So I would say don't let your regional center tell you, oh, the FMSs are going to take a while, so we are not going to be, you know, on a timeline or a crunch in a hurry to get you that budget. The reality is most FMSs won't take a meeting with you until you have a budget. So everybody has to do their part. We don't get to throw anybody under the bus. And it's good to go into the meeting, just be clear, you know, who needs to do what.
I think that's a really great point. So I'm going to do one last question that I'm going to ask all of the facilitators to answer, and I'm just going to kind of ping pong around my Zoom room again. So depending on where you are in my Zoom room depends on when I call on you. But Vivian did say, please speak up if your regional center tries to discourage you from joining SDP. And I would just highlight, please speak up in general. I think the strongest thing, you know, there are so many negatives of COVID, and I want to be very clear about that. But I think COVID helped build a community in many ways and strengthen a community, because we weren't using Zoom. We weren't doing these statewide meetings. I am currently in Rochester, New York. This definitely would not be happening pre-COVID. And there are so many meetings and so many communities out there that you can join and people that you can meet. And one of the things, like my favorite things that I've watched happen with people who join self-determination is watching them build their circle of support and have friends and have people who really understand where they're coming from, whether it be other parents or family members, etc. But so what I would like each of the facilitators to do is to share as kind of a closing thought, what is the number one most important thing that you would tell somebody if they were thinking about trying self-determination just at the very beginning, or the most important thing that you would want them to know about self-determination? And while you are talking, and again, I'm just going to ping pong around my room. I'm glad you raised your hand, Helen, because you were first on my Zoom room regardless. But
I knew you were going to call on me.
I appreciate that. While each of you is talking, Abraham is going to put your contact information into the chat again, because the independent facilitators in this room may be able to speak to you, do a consultation. They may be the right fit, or they might refer you to somebody else if they think that somebody else is stronger. That doesn't mean they don't like you. It means that I can tell you that every professional in this room wants what's best for you. And sometimes I look at a case and I say, I'm not what's best for this person. I need to refer them to the person who is. And Tamara's right, you should join that group. I spend a lot of time on it as a warning. I'm a little bit of a millennial, guys. I don't know how to tell you this. For those of you who didn't know, I spend a lot of time on social media. But Helen, what is that one thing that you would tell an interested family or participant?
The number one thing is that self-determination is for many, 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 many years to come. It is a mindset. It is So starting this process is just that. It's a start, and it can continue to grow and change with you.
Exactly. Person-centered planning, for example, is not a static document. It's an ongoing process. I don't know anybody who is the same as they were 3 years ago. I'm not the same as I was 3 days ago. So I don't think we can expect people with disabilities to be the same either. So I think that's a great thing to add. And it's one of the reasons why, for example, we encourage adding including an independent facilitator ongoing in your spending plan to update your person-centered plan annually to show ongoing needs and funding requests. Vivian?
Yes, so a couple of things. Just quickly to answer Lily, I'm going to go ahead and post an email, if that's okay, Naomi, to the DDS Ombudsperson's office.
Yes, and I'm going to put the statewide meeting that's tomorrow.
Okay, perfect. So what I want to kind of really emphasize is how important it is for you to be part of this process. I think there's sometimes a misconception that when you do have an independent facilitator, they kind of take over everything, and parents or whoever is supporting the participant, including the participant, take a step back. No, you're an active driving force behind this process and will always continue to be and should be. We are definitely there to help, to support, to advocate, to facilitate, but we just want to make sure that you're continue to be very much a part of this process. That's the self part of self-determination, but and also to really, follow your instincts and follow your gut. If there's a feeling that you're having something's not right, speak up, just like Naomi said. It's really important at any point in time, not just if you're being discouraged to go into self-determination, but anything in general. So those were kind of important points.
And Vivian, I think you highlighted something that's really important. There is a self part of self-determination. That's one of my favorite quotes in the world, as Vivian knows. I say it a lot. But I think, Melissa said, and she said this correctly in the chat a little while back, that there is not, sometimes there's a myth that self-determination is so much work, and that doesn't have to be true. However, I'm not going to lie to anybody in this room and say that self-determination isn't work, and to pretend that it's not is going to throw people off. And it's, and not everybody has it in them in that moment to do that level of work. And there is nothing wrong with that, because we all have a lot going on in our lives, and we are in calendar year 4 of a global pandemic. So we are all just doing the best we can. And so in that case, I would really just encourage people to know that the work is worth it. And, the overall outcome is worth it. So thank you, Vivian. Carola, we're going to move on to you next.
So one thing that's very important to remember about self-determination, and it's based on strengths, passions, visions in the future. And so it's easy sometimes for parents of young kiddos going just miss that piece of the center is your kid, his passions, his loves. So just make sure that when you're considering the services, you are engaging all these elements, because at the end, the client's in the center, and he should be sitting in the driver's seat. I think that's very important.
Keeping the person-centered in person-centered, because there are a lot of wonderful parents here. I just want to be really clear. However, your kids grow up, and I was a difficult teenager, so I get to say this. We do grow up. We do give you a lot of gray hairs in the process, but making us independent is the best way that we possibly can do things. I don't think Martha, Tamara, Sue, or Melissa has answered the question about that thing that they would tell a client.
I can go. I would say really educate yourself with the SDP process. Attend meetings like this as often as possible. Picking an IF that's good fit for your family is extremely important. And it's only possible if you know what you're looking for. So continue to study the SDP, follow updates, join Facebook groups, and etc. And I'll say be proactive, because in SDP, you are the driver of this whole process.
Excellent.
I'll go next. Sue, you stole a lot of what I was gonna say, but it's okay. The only thing I'd like to add is like educate yourself. Go through the IF training yourself, even if you choose not to be the IF for your loved one. You can still do IF trainings. There's free ones that come up through all the time. Maybe if somebody could put the state council website as well, and learn your rights. That's the biggest thing. You know your rights. You know timelines. You know how to communicate with the people that will work towards what you need in the self-determination program is going to be a big thing. Having a facilitator that will help educate you, but also give you the ability to take the reign and to take the lead on a lot of the things. Ultimately, that's a big part of self-determination, because ultimately, like I think Tamara, somebody mentioned earlier, we don't have to be in your lives forever. Put us where you need us, and then after you feel comfortable enough that you could do this on your own, then you're not going to need an IF to help you through the process later on.
There was a question, there's been a couple of questions in the chat about where can you receive independent facilitator training. Julie's going to put some contact information for us in the chat. And that is a question that if you can send us an email, and we will send you an email back tomorrow with the answer to that, because there's several different links we can give you. But for everybody interested in that, if you just send us an email, which Julie will put our emails in the chat, we will get that information to you. Tamara, I think I still needed you and Melissa.
Okay, well, the one thing that I want to tell you guys is that you will make mistakes, okay? You will do stuff wrong. And the most important thing is that nothing is set in stone. So you have a spending plan and you want to change it. You will probably change it 2 or 3 times over the course of a year. Your person-centered plan, your child is going to decide that they want to take up pottery classes, okay, out of the blue or whatever. And you can change your plan, you can add to it, you can delete stuff from it. It's okay to change your mind. And even if you're going through the self-determination process, and you decide, wait a minute, this is just it. I had a family member pass away. I just can't continue. Put it on hold. It's okay. You can continue on later or just completely drop it. It's okay. You don't have to finish the process if you don't want to. So you have control and you can change your mind. That's what I wanted to say.
It's a choice. It's a good choice for some people, but it is a choice. And I think that that's really important to know, that I think everybody has the right to know about the choice, but we can't make the right choice for you or your family. And there's no wrong choice. When you're doing what you think is best for the people that you love and you're doing it from your heart, it is the right choice. So our last 2 people, and Kathy, I know you're telling me that I have 1 minute. I promise I'll be done.
We should wrap up. So
yes. Melissa or Elizabeth, do either of you have a quick answer of this last question?
I just want to say that it's a long process, but it's not a harder process. You already have all the skills. You've been advocating for your kids all of this time. Plus, I think it's a little bit easier in that you have the IF there helping you along. So I don't be discouraged to not go into SDP. You have all the skills. You've been using it all this time, and you will see the fruits of your labor. I know a lot of times we advocate at school and at the insurance and this and that, we might not see any fruits, but with the spending plan and when everything gets going, you'll see that everything will work out. And then another thing
you are final thought.
Okay, no, go ahead. Yes.
All I was going to say is, yeah, the person-centered plan is very important. I had a mom, and I already put this in the chat, but I had a mom that kept saying to me over and over and over and over, I need a tutor. I need a tutor. And I said, well, how old is your child? Well, he's 26. Okay, but why does he need a tutor? Because if you just say tutor, regional center is going to say, oh, sorry, we don't do tutors. So when she explained to me why he needed a tutor and what skills she wanted him to learn and what she thought was things that he was struggling with, I was able to call that something different the regional center does fund for. And that's the thing that is really great about having a good independent facilitator. Is it money skills? Well, then independent living can do that. There's so many ways to word it better. The regional center understands. And a lot of times it's no, because we're wording it incorrectly.
Sometimes it's all about what you call it. So our contact information is in the chat should anybody have any further questions. We want to thank you all so much for being here. We especially want to thank our presenters for taking their time to be here tonight and sharing their expertise and their thoughts. Like Tamara said so eloquently earlier, you cannot go wrong with anybody on this chat. On this meeting. I am privileged to call a lot of people on this Zoom my friends. And you can't go wrong with them. They are wonderful people and they are amazing professionals. If you are interested in the recording of this, again, send us an email. We will have it within a couple of days. It takes a bit, and we'd be happy to send it to you. We will also give it to North Bay Regional Center. The contact information for all of our presenters is in the chat, but we are going to sign off for the evening, and we hope you have a wonderful evening. Thank you, everyone.